Hi, everyone. My name is Robin Brumfield, and I'm excited, really excited to be here with you today as your leadership training specialist. Before we get started, did you know that by participating in in this webinar, you could qualify for a special leadership development pin? Step one is to attend at least six of these engaging webinars that started from September 2024 and they will end by June of 2024. Absorb all of the knowledge that is shared in step two. And step three, apply what you have learned in your unit or district to show us how you are making a difference. Once you've completed these steps and demonstrated your leadership in action, you'll unlock an exclusive leadership development pin award. It's not just a pin, it's a symbol of your leadership and excellence as a leader in our community. Now, let's dive in. If you have any questions or thoughts throughout the webinar, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm excited to share some valuable insights with you today. We do have a special question, and so when you're applying your answer, the special question is the role of the vice president just to be carbon copy of the president? That's the special question, and that will be asked later on. And if that's the special question that you need to tag when you're applying for the pin. But before we go into our presentation, I am so happy to introduce our newly elected president of our newly elected New York State president, Miss Patty Frazier. Patty?
Thank you, Robin, and the leadership development team for allowing me to join in tonight. It's really been a pleasure so far for 1 month serving as president. I'm grateful for all the support and outreach of wonderful thoughts that I've received so far, and I'm hoping they continue for the next 23 months. My theme of presidency is measuring our mission for every child, and we do talk a lot about the mission. It's tied into the fact that we're a 501c3 through the IRS, but one of the parts that we often don't talk about is the fact that there's an expectation of a 501c3 to be able to sustain their leadership so that they can continue to do their mission-focused work. So that's one of the reasons why these leadership development workshops and webinars are so important. And I'm appreciative of everybody who has joined us tonight in this special time of year to take the time to work on your skills as a leader. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it back to Robin.
Thank you. Thank you. So as I said, I don't want you to get upset if you don't catch the question, because we this is a webinar and it will be recorded. So you can always revisit and listen to this important information again. So keep watching, keep learning, and remember, you can return to this webinar whenever you like for that special question. Now, let's dive into the discussion. I am happy. It's really funny because PTA is also flexible and PTA is full of knowledge. So during a fireside chat, one of the things that I had expressed was the need to have more webinars in regards to the role of the vice president. And God just sent this angel, Jen Colazzo. She was sitting there right by the fire, and she said, "You know what? I have just what you need." So I'd like to introduce everyone, our secretary for New York State, Jen Colazzo, as she gives us the presentation on that very important role with the vice president. Jen?
Robin, I don't think I have ever been given such a warm welcome and a warm introduction. Thank you. Thank you so very much. I'm going to remember this moment always. And I'm so very honored to have a second opportunity to share this gem of a creation. PTA has been so very welcoming, and anytime we have ideas we have only to reach out to the person sitting next to us to get answers and get information. And I'm very lucky to have just been that person at that fireside chat. So Robin, thanks again. So yes, I'd really like to get started. This is a fantastic opportunity to really highlight and give some recognition to the role of the vice presidency. We know that our presidents are leaders, whether it's a single president or two co-presidents, but I find more and more often when I am talking with a first-time vice president, they not only could be a first-time officer, but a first, a brand new member. And they find themselves jumping into, or I should say, being slowly asked to take on an officership, and it's that of the vice presidency. So let's share a little bit about what we would like our vice presidents to be, what they have been, and maybe how they can work in your unit. So let's do a little sharing here. Okay, and here we go. All right, and we are going to start our web. There we go. The very important role of the vice president. And it's a position that many units, if our units are struggling, they may not have a vice president. And, more and more, it's an officership, a position that really can be extremely helpful and is very useful if we can, make sure that we have somebody to take its place. Our vice presidents really are VIPs. There are so many jobs when we think about our individual PTA units. We have our presidents, our leaders, the buck stops with them. We have our treasurers, who are our money people. They handle our funds. They are trusted with our finances and our budgets and keeping our units on track financially. We have our secretaries, who are our record keepers and our keeping us on track in terms of what is happening, what has happened, recording. They really are historians in a sense. And of course, not to forget our many chairmen and our committee leaders. Everybody has a very important role, but our vice presidents really have a unique flexibility. So let's dive in and talk about these very important people. Now, a very important person to me as a mentor always asked me to begin with our PTA mission. Let's go back and review what it is PTA is all about. And that is the children. It's making every child's potential a reality. And it's engaging, it's empowering not just our families and our communities, but us as the care holders of our organization to make that reality possible. And of course, the New York State PTA mission. We are a powerful voice for every child, a relevant resource for our families, our communities, and an advocate for education and the well-being of every child. And not just our officers, but every single PTA member, advocating for the education and the well-being of every one of our students here in New York State. So let's discuss the duties of our vice presidents. And I hope everybody takes a little bit of happiness out of our imagery here. I appreciate you all for signing on this, the 18th day of December. I cannot believe we are 1 week away from Christmas, but this is the holiday season of giving, giving to our students all that we do all year round. and our officers are constantly giving of themselves. And the vice president is a very unique individual, and the support and the dedication that they give to our individual PTA units, to our regions, to our councils. And of course, our wonderful state vice presidents. We have a group of absolutely fantastic individuals that support our president and our treasurer, our secretary, and all of our members here at New York State. But remembering, we are talking about the vice president. We are not talking about a co-president. And that's something that I hope to say several times during this webinar. Not a co-president. This is an individual officer. So let's dive in. Now, our New York State PTA bylaws, which can be found on our New York State PTA website, nyspta.org, defines the first vice president as an aide to the first vice president, the office of vice president, as an aide to the president, performing duties as assigned by the president. Again, we are not talking about a co-president. We are talking about an individual separate from the president. We are talking about assigning duties that, each individual president is going to have their certain way of working. And the vice president has that ability to focus on what the president needs them to accomplish. Now, there may also be specific duties spelled out either in an organization's bylaws, which New York State PTA spells out the duties of the officers, but in your procedures. Every office has its specific tasks, and there may be more specificity with regards to the vice presidency within a unit's book of procedures. And again, not a co-president if one is a vice president. So the duties of the office of the vice president can be broken down very simply. They're there to assist. They can be also there to assume, but they can also be there to chair. Now, every unit is different. Some units may have a very robust volunteer calling, and there may not ever be any open positions. Other units have a harder time finding volunteers, and it's an ebb and a flow. Some years it may be better than others, but if you have an opportunity, your vice president can assist with that, filling in those various roles in hopes that we bring in more volunteers who understand the job. So vice president has that luxury of learning an awful lot about their unit. They may find themselves assisting with the president in any, specific task, and every president is different to every individual PTA unit. So that may look very different, one vice president to another. They can assume any open chairmanships or I should say committees. There isn't someone to help guide a new fundraising chair. Well, then you have a vice president who's there to help assist and assume that open position. And finally, chairmanships. Every unit, again, is very different. A full description, once again, can be found in your procedures as to what those open slots, are. And having a vice president who may be also very brand new to the organization, presents them a very unique opportunity to be able to be doing on-the-job learning about their particular unit, about the way that they function in assuming those open slots. And I don't think I know of any volunteer who would pass up gaining that additional knowledge, especially if they have thoughts about, increasing their volunteer position and perhaps taking on a more formidable role, namely, the treasury, or perhaps in time the presidency. Our goal at New York State PTA is to provide all of the tools that any officer would need to be extremely successful in their position, thereby making their unit extremely successful. And who's to benefit that but our children, the very ones that we are advocating for? Once again, this is not a co-president. We are talking about a vice president position. So what would be the qualifications for a vice president? Well, when we talk about volunteers, our qualifications, we hope, begin with the love of our school. We're working within our buildings, helping our students to succeed, our staff and administration to be successful in making all of our students' educational endeavors. So we want to be in love with our school buildings, but we also want to be in love with the work that PTA does. And it's not to say that every one of our over 200,000 plus New York State PTA members are, but in supporting your PTA on a day-to-day, we really want you to, be present, be there, and want to be doing the work. And when you want to do the work, it tends to come easier. We don't ever want to feel a volunteer is forced into doing anything. And when it comes to the vice presidency, I would say that the third qualification is to be a good listener. Now, you're learning, you're interacting, and you're an individual. So not every interaction is going to be with a best friend. Sometimes you will be called to interact or pick up a task or provide, service to another committee, so on and so forth. And we really have to take the time to listen to one another. And in being that good listener, they're taking away any emotion, taking away any set of specificity, excuse me. It is later in the day, the mouth doesn't want to work so well. We tend to be that fresh set of ears. And when we are a good listener, we are able to share information that may otherwise get blocked from really coming out. And working with your different committees, being that floater, so to speak, having that good set of ears to be able to pass along information can be a big positive to the job. Now, to prepare for being a vice president, obviously you want to learn what it takes to be a president at any point, and this is part of our bylaws. To be the vice president means you may be called to step in to be the leader of your organization. Maybe for a short time, it may be for an extended period of time. So you really want to have a vice president that is familiar, not perfect, but to at least understand the role and the responsibilities. Great thing about our PTA organization is that we are flexible and we are always here to help. So if you don't have anyone in your unit that's able to be a mentor of sorts, and you don't have a council, you all have regions and wonderful region directors that can offer you that guidance. You also have any one of a number of state volunteers and officers that also, when contacted, can offer you that support. A vice president wants to really have a handle on what are the acting committee chairs. Not every unit is going to look the same, but what committees function in your unit? Fundraising? Well, yes, but do you have one fundraising committee, or do you have several smaller fundraising committees that operate individually? Do you have a programs team? Do you have an awards team? Maybe you specifically have a scholarship team. You want to familiarize yourself perhaps with who runs those committees, perhaps when they function. A good idea would be to familiarize yourself with your unit's calendar, your policies and procedures. Again, with the president's role, this is very important to know how money is handled, to know any banking procedures. And, with events, especially in elementary schools, there tend to be a lot of events. There tend to be a lot of things always going on. Not to know every detail, but to familiarize yourself enough to, if called on, be able to step in and assist. Resources. It's always a good idea to know where your resources are, who those individuals are, to be able to reach out if needed. Perhaps you have someone in your unit that has done the bylaws committee. Now, every unit has to have their bylaws reviewed every 3 years. What can they tell you? If there is a question, your resources. You may have somebody who has been a teacher liaison, questions about functions going on in the school. Know those individuals, maybe not 100% how to contact them, but to know who they are, because if they're needed, you know who to reach out to. And as always, additional trainings. Now, New York State PTA really tries to emphasize officer trainings. The region does a number of them. Different regions do that differently. So it's important to find out when your region provides officer training, either in the beginning of the year or at the end of the year when the new officers have been elected. New York State PTA, in addition to these wonderful webinars, provides online training under the leaderships tab, again, at New York State NYSPTA.org. We have a wonderful website, and I cannot encourage everyone enough to pop in every now and again. You can get lost and spend a great deal of time there, but when you need to find something, the resources are there. In addition to our website and these webinars, New York State has an annual convention in November with a number of wonderful workshops, different workshops provided to those in attendance. Those workshops also are shared online underneath the Leaders tab at nyspta.org, and our Summer Leadership Conference, which is our premier opportunity for state training in person. That event is happening during the summer, usually in July, and information is found on the New York State PTA page. Now, it goes without saying that a vice president is part of the team. You are an elected officer. You have a leading president, you have a treasurer, you have a secretary. Your unit cannot function without those 3 people. Maybe you have co-secretaries. Maybe you have a parliamentarian. We need to work together as a team in order to be successful as a unit. And that may mean being different things at different times. But this is not to say that these people have to become your best friend or replace your best friends or become your family, because we all have our families. But in essence, the success of your unit's going to be directly tied to the way that your team is successful. You need to make sure that you are ready to step in and take whatever lead is being given to you to make that team successful. A vice president should always have access to the unit bylaws and any standing rules. You should always have a copy of your budget, a copy of your minutes, and contact information for your officers and for your board. At any point, those things can get you started no matter what direction your job is going to take you. Possible duties, and these are just two of many things that may be asked of you depending upon your leadership and the structure of your PTA unit. Some PTA units are very large. They have a very large school. There may be many different jobs. Smaller schools, you may find yourself being asked to fill in because there aren't as many volunteers to call upon. But most often, vice presidents can be found as check signers. Remember, one of our pillars of our insurance is that no New York State PTA check is signed singly. You have to have 2 signatures on every check. You may find yourself as a member of the nominating committee. Officers, whether they are new or they are veteran experienced, they are called upon to really kind of keep the eyes out for who those newer volunteers are that may become part of your executive team. So getting to know as many of your membership as possible is always a very good idea. Now, the office of the vice president, if I've done a good enough job tonight, will look very differently depending upon your unit. You may have many things to do outwardly at the face, or you may have more behind the scenes work to do. But again, it all depends on your unit, the activities of your unit, and your leadership. Vice presidents should always be taking lead from the president, the leadership. I would always respond to the buck stops with the president. And when I was president, that's exactly the type of attitude that I have. And vice presidents, very important task. They're giving that support to the leadership of the president. So whether it's a small task or a larger one, again, not a co-president. It's a flexible job, okay? The day-to-day, you're filling in, discussions, you're taking part, long range planning, short range planning. You're part of the conversation. Officers set the plan of work in motion for the unit to follow. You may be called to work out issues. Now, we're all human beings. We have individual personalities, and we have our likes, we have our dislikes, we have our way of working through things. And it's no secret that we do not agree with everybody. How we handle that, however, will also affect the success of our tasks and of our unit. And even more so, it will affect the success of our advocacy in our unit to our school, to our students. So again, it's all about the children, the students, the young people. As a vice president, if there is conflict on a task, a committee, a board position, you may be asked to step in. You may be asked to kind of mediate or navigate your unit through that particular situation. It's not unheard of. Again, listening, being a great listener, and reminding our members, our volunteers, of our mission to make every student's educational experience the very best that it can be. You'll work with your president to tailor your job. Maybe you're better at things of a design nature. Maybe you're not so great with the outward communication. Maybe you're a better behind the scenes person. An ambassador might come easy for some, not for others. Liaison between your administration and your board, sharing information, point A to point B. Maybe you're more of a, liaison volunteer, vice president. Again, this is not a co-president. So no matter what the job is, you're reporting to your president. And keep it flexible. Sometimes the events require that, and other times they'll require something different. We keep the lines of communication open with our president. Outward is not for everybody. But when you are outward and speaking on behalf of your organization, you are taking the direction from the president. So a vice president should never be out there expressing their own opinion. You're assisting your president, communicating always with the president and any other individuals. But when it comes to speaking on behalf of your unit, that needs to be directed to the president, not the vice president. You are not a co-president. You're also not the president's shadow. You're an individual assisting. You're working together. But you do have your own thoughts, your own personality. You have your own ideas. Share them, okay? Be an interactive vice president. Don't just follow in the background. Attend meetings on behalf of your PTA unit. If your president can't be there, it would be the task of the vice president to stand in. Again, you're representing your PTA unit. It's very important that the message that you share as a representative of your PTA unit is that of your PTA unit, not your personal. You keep yourself informed as a vice president, always aware, always taking in the information. You want to make sure that you are knowledgeable about what is going on, about keeping update with resources. You want to make sure that you are available to assist whenever possible. And board transitions are something that vice presidents can be very helpful with, especially if they have experience in a particular officership. Maybe you've been the secretary before. As a vice president, you can offer some guidance. You can share how the interaction between the president and the vice president and the secretary has worked. Perhaps you don't have any experience with, say, the Treasury, but you can offer how things have worked in the past and share that day-to-day interaction that is not necessarily privy from the procedures guide. So again, not the shadow, but you are working to assist in all things your PTA unit. Now, traditional duties of a vice president: chairing a vacant or a struggling or a critical committee. Now, I hate to have to say that these are some committees that most often struggle when we look at units. We can't find anybody to do membership. Membership can be a very big job. Of course, membership is also a fun job. But if your unit does not have a membership chairman, that might be a place we find a vice president stepping in to assist, because our organization, like so many, can't function without our membership. It's our lifeblood. So in addition to helping out with the membership, well, we want to try to recruit somebody who can help. So you then find yourself as a vice president cheerleader trying to bring volunteers in, explaining what is involved and showing them the ropes, but being there to support. You're the vice president. President can be very busy from time to time. So the perfect person to ask those simpler, easy to answer questions would be the vice president. Now, programming, depending upon what your unit looks like, you may have a very robust academic programming, field trips and speakers and things of that nature, organizing that. And if you are good with being a liaison between you, the PTA unit, and the administration and teachers, that could be a very good fit with stepping in and trying to recruit people to do the programming. Education and advocacy and family engagement. Again, explaining what these things have to do with our PTA units. While the president has, other duties to handle and take care of on the day-to-day, putting yourself out there into your volunteer membership, into your school community, recruiting those families could be very, very beneficial. Legislative, resolutions, fundraising, all very important things to our PTA units. Again, just like membership, we can't function without fundraising. That is our bread and butter. So if we don't have people to do the fundraising, perhaps a vice president could be helpful in either running a fundraiser, if there's absolutely no one, bringing in people who may have that skill. And we all know that they're out there. There are some people that are just naturals at fundraising. So looking to make those connections. Business sponsorships are another fantastic way that PTAs have built relationships, brought in additional funding. And if you know individuals within your school community, maybe they are or they are not members, but making that connection and bringing them in to benefit your PTA unit. The point I'm making here is you want to speak up, okay? For the next week, it's Santa Claus who's going to be doing the speaking up, but when we get back from our holiday breaks, it's the PTAs that are going to be speaking. We are providing the programming and the extra enrichment experiences, and we need to make sure that we are making those things happen And we can't do it without our volunteers, without our membership base. So school may have started in September, and that's when our membership drives happen, but we're making that connection all year round. And as a vice president in your organization, in your unit, in your school, in your community, you need to speak up and make that very important point. There's always a new idea because every one of us is different. We don't all share the same brain. We don't all have the same ideas. And if given the opportunity, we can provide a unique opportunity to our units. Okay. We all have that different way to participate, and we should all share that. So, what kind of new ideas? Well, perhaps you are brilliant at communications. Now, as a vice president, maybe you could create the PTA website if there's never been one before. Or maybe it might be a monthly newsletter. Some units do still actually send things out on paper. And even though, it's much more environmentally, sound to put things out on computer, we know that not everyone is technology savvy. I, for one, am not. And I admit that. My tech team happen to be my 3 children, and I'm proud to say that. I learn from them every day. But maybe you have found yourself a vice president that is just brilliant in this department. New idea. Now, our families are transitioning and changing, and we get new people moving into our community as people move out, as their children age out. How about a special liaison for those families? Maybe you have someone that is just absolutely brilliant in that welcoming, open spirit kind of personality. New idea for your community, perhaps. School spirit. Well, everybody has school spirit, but maybe you have a vice president that has been a former cheerleader and just has a completely different take on some school spirit activities that you may want to have. So perhaps in working with programming, you might have a vice president that is brilliant at bringing in some new, some different programs for your students in your community. Perhaps you have somebody that has an incredible knowledge for organization, for parliamentary procedure. Now, even though parliamentarians and Robert's rules are no strangers to New York State PTA and PTA altogether, how often do we find a parliamentarian in our units? Well, parliamentarian is a special position altogether, but your vice president may have an incredible thirst for knowledge and may be able to be that parliamentary, expert and have that knowledge and be able to find the answers to difficult questions and, that take advantage of that. And of course, there's the bylaws expert. Now, we at New York State PTA are, again, very lucky to have wonderful committee chairs. Our bylaw chairs are no exception, and they make it incredibly easy for our units to find their bylaws, to utilize their bylaws, and to renew their bylaws. Again, nyspta.org. But to have someone within your unit that has that incredible knowledge and that tendency to just be very comfortable with things of that nature. The playing field is wide open when it comes to what your talent may be with your vice presidency. These are just a handful of ideas that you could find within your unit, within, utilizing the skills of your vice president. I'm sure there are as many new ideas as there are vice presidents in every one of our units across our great state. Please consider them. But we need to keep speaking up. Just because a vice president has a great idea, bringing in more people has to be a priority at all times. Bringing in others and making room for not just them, but for their opinions, for their talents and gifts to share. And as we are bringing them in, we have to remember to keep listening, because we can always do more in our units. I don't think there's ever been a unit that would say, I'm doing too much, I'm doing enough. No. There's always something more that we can do. These are our children that we're talking about. So there's always something, but we can always do it just a little bit differently. Share your ideas. Don't just accept that this is what I'm being told to do. You have an idea, share it. Maybe that's the $1 million idea. There's always a good way to be involved. That's your seat at the table. Let's put some more chairs around that table, because 2 chairs is way too lonely. And with that, I'm just going to say this is such a great way to end a webinar. PTA is all of us, and all of us are PTA. Every single member of PTA in New York State has something to contribute to enriching the opportunities that we have and we provide for our students. And I want to thank you all for being that membership. If you have any questions, you have any concerns at any point, if you do not have somebody in your area that can answer your questions, every single member has a region director, and contact is a call or an email away. Once again, there is our website, nyspta.org. It is an incredible resource, just amazing. So please do not ever hesitate to reach out. There is no such thing as a silly question. And I want to thank you all very much. I want to thank Robin for this incredible opportunity. I want to thank our president, Patty Frazier, for this wonderful opportunity. And I am going to stop share right now.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Jen. Bravo. Thank you so much. That was so informative. And we can tell that that was something that you created from your heart, because that information it's not that it's not there, but that role of the vice president sometimes can be so overlooked. And it was so awesome that you dusted it off. I know you gave a presentation workshop on the role of the vice president, but to hear it now, have it as our webinar that's taped, so our units can go back and our leadership can go back and hear the valued information you shared. Thank you so much. I really want to thank you, Jen. I really do.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I'm honored to be able to help any member and to bring in any member into an officer role in our great
Right.
organization. I have
Thank you.
enjoyed every moment being a part of this great organization. So thank you.
Thank you. So one of the questions in the chat is, when a unit has multiple VPs, particularly, 3 or more, should they have designated tasks or job titles assigned at the beginning of the year? Or should they adopt a flexible approach and wait to be asked? What is the best approach?
If they have multiple vice president roles and they're already spelled out either in their procedures or, let's just call it their history, it never hurts to start at the beginning and, assign A, B, C, L, M, N, X, Y, and Z. Because when we know what is expected of us, the anxiety seems to be kept at a minimum. The whole motto of PTA flexible, we want to be ready to respond and to change our way of working on things, because we just never know. Anyone who has been around young people, either has young children themselves, raised children, worked with children, it's like the weather. Stand still for 2 minutes and things are going to change. So it works a lot better if you have that clear expectation. Again, I know I'm throwing this back to the president, but your leadership really should be responsible enough. And I know that's a tough word sometimes, but it is the truth. And I know I have taken on that role myself. And it is so much better when you say to your vice presidents or you say to your committee chairs, this is how I need this to run, because we've got a whole lot of things going on. And if things need to change, well, then we need to communicate once again. But I think that starting out a clear expectation makes any volunteer role manageable. Any role, even for people who say, I can't volunteer, I just can't. Because
Thank you.
little things.
Thank you. So, one of the questions we have is, does the VP, but does vice president, should the vice president assume that they will automatically become the president?
You know what? I would not assume anything. I really, let's be honest, okay? Things can and always do change. And it's a great opportunity that you have as a vice president to prepare yourself. But realistically, perhaps you reach the end of your vice president term and you're not sure that that's where you want to take your next position or your position at home. My motto is always family first. Things may change and you may not be able to run for the position of president. And if there is another individual that is equally as capable, it should never become a popularity contest. But we should always be electing officers that are going to be the best possible leader for their unit or for their council. It doesn't matter. And that's what I hope our members are always thinking when they take their ballot or place their vote. We should be electing the best person for the job. And sometimes, that individual may be your vice president, they may not be.
Okay, thank you. Is the vice president just a carbon copy of the president?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You are assisting your president. You are working for the best of your unit, but you are a person. You have your own character. You have your own skills. And while our vice presidents should never be working to negate their leaders, they should, hopefully their leaders are appreciating the gem that they are and really treating them like the VIPs that they are.
Okay. Another question is, can a vice president run a meeting?
A vice president has been asked many times to step in and run a meeting for a president. If a president needs to excuse themselves for whatever reason, the vice president can and will assume the podium. So it's always a good idea for, you know, at some point for your president to connect with your vice president or your multiple vice presidents to say, here is the situation. And emergencies happen. May your president never have to excuse themselves for an emergency or any other reason, because their leadership and the continuity that that leadership provides is very important to a unit. Members, especially newer members, look for that leadership. And if that leadership ducks out every now and again, and I like to use that phrase ducks out because, look, family first, but when it comes to running a PTA meeting, that's the most important thing happening right then and there. And sometimes you'll have people that don't feel the same way. But again, setting that expectation and being ready takes a lot of the anxiety out of it. You'll find yourself being able to step in and handling it.
So another question that came up is, as a vice president, how do you handle it if your president doesn't provide that motivation you may need to carry on your vice president role?
And again, I like to go back to the beginning. Every volunteer has a why. And some years back, New York State PTA asked the question, what is your why? And I heard from so many fellow volunteers, fellow officers, fellow region members, people from across the state, people from down on the island, and I got to listen to their whys. And we all had that same, you know, in common. It's all about the kids. It's about our children, our youth, our young people, our students. And if there is a motivation greater than that, I sure would like to know it. Because honestly, I know it takes a little bit of self-will there, especially if you think that somebody is working against you, or you're not being heard, or you're not being appreciated. Go back to the beginning. Why are you PTAing? It's all about the kids.
That's right. Oh, that's wonderful. One final question that I see here in the chat is, as a vice president, do you have to step into a president, secretary, or treasurer position if they resign?
If your president resigns and you are the sole vice president, that is outlined in your bylaws. And again, I encourage every vice president to go back and familiarize yourself with that procedure, because emergencies happen, situations come up. And that is something for certain. Insofar as secretaries and treasurer, there are also guidance as to how those positions get filled. It is not the duty of the vice president to ever assume those roles. A vice president is elected to be a vice president, and the only role that the vice president would fill in an emergency vacancy would be the presidency. Again, nyspta.org, leadership tab. So much information. And if you need the Cliff Notes version, our leadership team is so knowledgeable. All you have to do is reach out to any one of them.
Well, on behalf of the leadership development team, with Sonia Varillo as our lead, and Mary Sotomayor and Kathleen McEnroe, I just want to thank you. I really want to thank you and thank everyone for coming and attending, and our president for her guidance. You know, because here it is, it's a week before, what, that great Christmas holiday. Everyone could be out shopping, doing other things, and this is a well-attended webinar. The information will be available on our website, and you can download it and review this information. Jen, I couldn't thank you enough for coming out and sharing this, like I said, this valuable information. I really want to thank you. You've done an outstanding, as someone has just put, a phenomenal job. This is wonderful. And I thank everyone for taking the time to come and listen and hear what needed to be shared. I thank you all for taking the time out. I just want to keep checking because I get little things in the chat, and I want to make sure I don't forget one last question. Oh, they're telling thank you. They're all saying thank you. And it's a great presentation. One of our leaders is saying the great presentation. Many vice presidents have been left out and don't understand their role, and they're glad that you were able to provide the understanding, the do's and don'ts, and understanding the role. And this is just, like I said, this is wonderful. And I just
Robin,
go
I'm going
back
to
to our
interrupt. I think you got a shout out from when you were president, from your vice president. She
Oh.
said you did a fantastic job. So I want to give you a shout out. When you were council president, your vice president just gave you a shout out. So I'm going to interrupt you,
Oh.
sister.
Thank you. But again, that's how, you know, I can only say, because what Kyle said and what my former vice president has said, previous vice president, you know, when you take that role of leadership, and Jen, you know, when you take that role of leadership, our why is about the children. It's not about our egos, and it's about strengthening the people that are under us, so that they can do the best that they need to do to service our children. So if
That's
I
right.
have a vice president, a secretary, a committee chair, no matter what your role, it's all about the children at the end of the day. And we're there to provide that enrichment opportunities, that advocate on behalf of them. And that's what we're here for tonight, because we're learning, and we're taking the time to learn and understand what the roles are so that we can do better. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank all those who came out from our New York State executive officers, as well as the governance team and those unit leaders that come throughout the state of New York. And I just want to appreciate it. I want to thank you to Kyle, who's always there for us. Our next webinar will probably be the second Wednesday of the month, pending no clumping into any holidays. And that webinar will be on AIM, a very, very important topic, because AIM has changed some of their guidance and restrictions and enhanced. And as we know, AIM is our insurance and throughout the state. And it's important that you know and understand how we can best get the best from our insurance. You know, we get these policies, and we want to make sure we're getting a policy that best supports our unit. And how can we do what we need to do so that insurance policy is great for our unit. So that's we're looking forward to that. That'll be the second Wednesday in January, pending no holidays that we're bumping against, and that'll be at 7:30. But I can't say anything about that without saying again, thank you to Jen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
a very best of luck to all of the vice presidents that were on tonight. Again, please reach out if there's any questions, any way we can help. Robin,
Thank you. And
thank
I
you.
encourage everyone to share when this information is up. Share that with your unit. Share that with your leadership. Someone might be saying, you know, maybe I want to serve as a vice president. This information was vital. So if everyone wasn't there, and while this was a well-attended webinar, it is important that we share this information, because like someone said, you might not really understand what your role is. And someone else said, it's, even though it might be defined, your answer was, it should be, it's the leadership that says, hey, this is what I want you to cover. This is what's necessary. And this workshop was absolutely vital. Thank you. Thank you very much. I wish everyone a wonderful and happy holiday. Looking forward to seeing you in the new year. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.